Okay. There, is that on? There we go. Hey.
Oh, the poor folks hate the rich folks, and the rich folks hate the poor folks. All of my folks hate all of your folks. It's American as apple pie. But during National Brotherhood Week, National Brotherhood Week, New Yorkers love the Puerto Ricans cause it's very chic. Step up and shake the hand of someone you can't stand. You can tolerate him if you try. Oh, the Protestants hate the Catholics, and the Catholics hate the Protestants, and the Hindus hate the Muslims, and everybody hates the Jews. But during National Brotherhood Week, National Brotherhood Week, it's national, everyone smile at one another hood week. Be nice to people who are inferior to you. It's only for a week, so have no fear. Be grateful that it doesn't last all year.
That's an old song from the mid 1900s. It's an oldie, but it's a good one. Some of those folk songs had a lot of good messages for us. So this is the Jeremiah Gunn Show. Welcome aboard. Thank you for listening. This Jeremiah Gunn Show, the truth teller, the true friend. I'm kind of the Chuck Norris of philosophy, and let's get to it. We got a lot to do. A lot to get to. Let's get to it. I want this program is dedicated to Charlie Kirk, our martyr, brother, hero, son, big brother to so many bullied young men and women who are just trying to figure out what happened to their country. And they got people standing in the way. The government education, mediatainment complex is run by the Democrat Party, vice versa. And we're in the middle of a civil war. I'm broadcasting from behind enemy lines. I want to give you a basic explanation. That song was done in the 60s, and it's kind of interesting. Today they're in the throes of all kinds of class warfare, race warfare. His name is Ami Horowitz, does these great videos online, man on the street kind of thing, where he finds out the inconsistencies of the tyranny of the irony age, and he points them out. He goes from Berkeley to Harvard and compares what the white folks, the awfuls, really think about the black folks and the brown folks and all that stuff. What's really going on? What's really true? Not what we'd like to think or hope. And that's hope. Those what did Ben Franklin say? Those who live on hope die fasting. So hope and change was an interesting slogan to get a Marxist in the White House, but it's not a destination. It's not a goal. It's not a strategy. It's nothing. So we'd like to give you real hope. Okay. This is a special show because I want to talk about. I was challenged by a good brother, a wise man, a very talented, creative neighbor, friend, coach, great guy. And he challenged me today, actually. I kind of inserted this show very special because just for this one purpose. He kind of challenged me and gave me an admonition about watch out for the name calling, You're going to call Tampon Tim or Newscomb or blah, blah, bullcrap Hussein, blah, blah, to be honest with you. Trump does that. I don't do it because he does. I did it before he did. But as Victor Davis Hanson said, he came along and he probably won the White House because he didn't play by the Nancy Pants Marquis of Queensberry rules or whatever Victor Davis Hanson calls it. He realized that this is a fight. It's a street fight. And as the Democrat, Communist, Marxist Party said things like, you don't bring the Chicago way. They're all from Chicago. Rahm Emanuel, Fry, blah, blah. All these guys. Who's the governor of Chicago? Prickster. They're fighting. You don't bring a knife to a gunfight. Okay? They put one of yours, what's say? They put one of yours in the hospital. You put one of theirs in the morgue. So that's the Chicago way. It's been corrupting our elections. That's where Hillary Rotten Klingon is from. So should I or should I not watch out for that kind of stuff? And it's an interesting admonition. It's understandable. PragerU had the creator, says he's a Christian, of the Babylon Bee, and he did a 5-minute video on PragerU, which are always excellent, and said it was called The Moral Case for Mockery. Pointed out examples in the Bible in the Old Testament for Judeo-Christians where the prophets are having this burn-off, and they're competing, and they're, the Elijah is saying, I never remember whether it's Elijah, but he's saying to them, because the fire ain't coming from their gods. They're cutting themselves, they're screaming, they're flagellating, they're doing everything. And the prophet of God says, hey, maybe he's on vacation. You better get a little louder. Maybe he's sleeping. Maybe he's a little hard of hearing. So anyway, there is a moral case for mockery. George Orwell said that every joke is a tiny revolution. But, I think when people play nice and play patty cake like Romney and Dole and McCain, do you remember Weathervane McCain, the rhino? I'm a maverick. You remember what he did? My friends, John Kerry is my friend. Well, Weathervane McCain, the friend of my enemy is my enemy. That works both ways. John Kerry was not a friend of America. He was the enemy within. Everybody swears an oath. Every single person that takes office swears an oath to defend and protect what? The Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic. That's why they found it necessary to create the Alien and Sedition Act. That's why the secessionists were called rebels and traitors. When we talk about the Civil War, we'll explain all of that Democrat policy that led to that and kept it going. It's still going. It's still going. You'll hear that on other shows. So, first thing we got to do is say, I understand the concept. You catch more flies with honey than vinegar. I get all that. But you can't play patty cake with somebody who's trying to kneecap you. Like remember the famous Tonya Harding thing. They're out to get you, your children, your state. They've already got my state. I'm behind enemy lines. It's a Confederate Democrat, but I repeat myself, Civil War. So the first kind of law of troubleshooting is find a known good, but kind of find out where you are. You ask yourself, like Charlie Kirk said, what time is it? What time is it? Where are we at? You got to find that out. You got to reconnoiter. You got to figure out where you're at right now. Situational awareness. It's not your grandfather's country. It's not your grandfather's party. Even your grandfather's was gone south. Nails in the coffin from the Democrats, starting with Wilson, the progressives. That's when they really started to drill holes in the side of the ship of state. They're sinking us. Deliberately, they're terrorists. They're insurrectionists. Everything's a parallel universe. They call the peaceful protesters on J6 insurrectionists. They were trying to prevent an insurrection. 2 movies on one screen, like Scott Adams said. So, you got to diagnose this disease. And it's cancer. And it's metastasized in this country. And it doesn't need a gummy bear vitamin C or echinacea or some aromatherapy candles. No, it's really far gone. There's somebody running in California for governor, and he's saying his ad is, "I will demolish ICE." Not all. I'll check the Constitution to see how this whole thing works. I will demolish ICE. If I'm elected governor, Jefferson Davis, I will abolish the federal constitutional Article 4, Section 4, borders. You know what defines a country? Borders, language, culture. 3 things. Borders, language, culture. Those are the definition of a country. We don't want borders. Borders are like not nice. We want to destroy this country and make it into the one that they're all fleeing. We just don't understand. Language. We're going to infantilize and we're going to print things in other people's languages because they can't learn that stuff. They can't learn this. It's too hard. We'll take care of them, cradle to grave. Just give me your money. Just give me your money. The reason that Democrats won't help out with anything is because their hands are in your pockets. And this isn't like, oh, he's very dualist. It's us against them. It's good and evil. He just sees an angel on one shoulder and a devil on the other. Grow up. I know more about that stuff than you do. So don't regurgitate your talking points that were shoved down your throat by a Marxist at a school. I don't care. Head Start through PhD. So, I heard a doctor talk one time, and he said, he gave the definition of diagnosis. That's the first thing you got to do. You got to diagnose this disease. He said, diagnosis, if you break it down, di means two, and gnosis means to know. So agnosis means you don't know. So an agnostic is saying, I don't know. An atheist is against something that doesn't exist. That's kind of interesting. But an agnostic, like asexual or whatever you want to put in front of, when you put an A in front of it, it's so diagnosis, two, agnosis, two, don't know. So he said, when you get a diagnosis, two people don't know. You don't know and your doctor doesn't know. So this wonderful gentleman asked me, and he cares. He just cares about his friends and neighbors and children and whatever that might turn it off if they hear somebody say, oh, blah, blah, instead of Obama. May he live forever. God bless the Pope. That's, this walk on water, wonderful man. Wrong. And everybody that followed him and everybody that he allowed in. So, the question is whether they would even listen or not. I don't know that they would. I don't know that they would listen. So who's my target audience? I said to him, Planet Earth. Planet Earth. I hear people from Europe. They're yearning to breathe free. And they don't have free expression like this. They don't have it. The UK, where we got our Magna Carta and everything else, the UK, England, that was supposed to, as one of their great philosophers said, remember, you've got to teach the world how to live. So that people of the Magna Carta, now they're throwing people in jail for a tweet or a joke. We can't do anything to Jimmy Kimmel when he's not a comedian, but these are comedians who've been thrown in jail and paying fines. Some of them are exiled to like Spain, if that'll last. Douglas Murray wrote a book called The Strange Death of Europe. So who's the target audience? The remnant, the few. Broad is the path that leads to destruction, and many take it. Narrow is the path that leads to salvation. And we can talk secular or religious. We talk about them both. It doesn't matter. But this is a separation of church and state country, so we just have to talk about, just because you don't mention God doesn't mean you won't go to damnation in your country. I think that Rome took 300 years to completely dissolve and fall apart. The barbarians were at the gate. We're at 250 years. 100 years ago, half. Pretty much half is when we started to erode, devolve. And like Tevye said, one little time I pulled out the thread, and where has it led? Where has it led? As soon as people started saying, well, we're smarter than they were, and we lost the democracy of the dead. So who am I talking to? Who's my target audience? That remnant. Everyone who's of the truth. Here's my voice. There were only, the apostle disciples, there were only 12, and one of them went left. One of them became a Democrat. So there was only 8 people in the ark for the whole earth. So, it's just an example. It's a parable. So it's always a remnant. In the revolution, it was only about 30% of the people. It's like a bell curve, 20-80 rule in sociology. So there's two 10%, one on the left and one on the right. And it's really right and wrong. You'll get tired of hearing that. It's not right and left. It's right and wrong. Period. So only about 30% wanted the revolution, who followed the founders. It's just like only about 30% of blacks either joined the North or did the Underground Railroad to get their freedom. Just like today, only about 30% got off Uncle Sam's plantation that the Democrats still run and always have run. So, we're talking to those people in the revolution. They followed their founders, their fathers. So I'm talking to men, especially young men who haven't transitioned left, like too many old men have. They're called little old ladies of both sexes. So if women want to fight along, I'm talking to women too. If they want to fight for their nation, for their birthright citizenship, great. That's great. But fighting is a manly necessity. It's a necessary evil. It's necessary to vanquish evil. So, I'm going to tell you what Lincoln at Washington said when he was the president of the Continental Congress that was trying to come up with the Constitution. Let's see if we can listen to it here. Okay, let's see.
The issue, the General Assembly declared, was whether the good people of America would, by wise and magnanimous efforts, reap the just fruits of that independence which they have so gloriously acquired, and of that union which they have cemented with so much of their common blood. Or whether, by giving way to unmanly jealousies and prejudices, or to partial and transitory interests, they will renounce the auspicious blessings prepared for them by the Revolution, and furnish to its enemies an eventual triumph over those by whose virtue and valor it has been accomplished.
So he was the least educated of all of the founders. He was basically a general and an entrepreneur. Great book called George Washington Entrepreneur. So let me read that back because they had a very elegant, erudite, educated manner of speaking. We can no longer doubt that the crisis is arrived at in which the good people of America are to decide the solemn question. We're here now. Crisis means turning point, which is what Charlie Kirk named as crisis means nexus, turning point, where the two lines on the chart cross. We're at a turning point. We're either going to slouch towards Gomorrah or we're going to take off and make America great again. Don't worry. Don't whine if you don't understand that. You will. If you pay attention and you're humble and keep, I used to coach, and God told the kid, we told the kids that, God gave you two ears, one mouth. You should do twice as much observing and twice as much listening as talking, period. So we can no longer doubt that the crisis has arrived at which good people of America are to decide the solemn question, whether they will, by wise and magnanimous efforts, reap the just fruits of that independence which they have so gloriously acquired, and of that union which they have cemented with so much of their common blood, or whether, by giving way to unmanly jealousies, he's not talking about men and women, masculine, and he's talking about men who have unmanly jealousies and prejudices, or to partial and transitory interests, those are called ephemeral, they will renounce the auspicious blessings prepared for them by the Revolution and furnish to its enemies an eventual triumph over those by whose virtue and valor it has been accomplished. So you want to spit on their grave? He says you can... But by just having unmanly jealousies and petty interests and self-serving interests, and I was talking about lobbyists, well, half of Congress, or more than half, are lobbyists. They're going to furnish to our enemy something that the enemy couldn't get, thanks to their heroic efforts. So, he doesn't use those words masculine. He says manly interest. The effete. Look that word up. It's great. They're not the ones who are going to make this happen. And all the founders, they were under the admonition from their creator, God, act like men. Be strong and courageous. A coward dies 1,000 deaths, a brave man only one. It's better to die on your feet than live on your knees. I had a neighbor, I lived near a Marine base. One time I had a neighbor, Gene Green, he was a Marine from Abilene, I think. But anyway, he's a Marine for sure. You know, typical squared away, tough Marine. And he just said to me one day in a gentle southern drawl, Gerard, there's worse things than dying. What is worse than dying? Well, a coward dies 1,000 deaths, a brave man only one. Do you remember Private Ryan? You know, Sam Adams says, if you want liberty, if you want to crouch down and lick the hand that feeds you, then depart from us. We seek not your counsel or arms. These guys gave us everything. We owe them everything, or we don't deserve it. Private Ryan, remember that? Wasn't there a scene in Private Ryan where when he's dying and he says to the young guy, earn this. Earn this. It's our obligation to earn this. Our fathers, brothers, grandfathers, they fought tyrants, fascists, communists, Democrats, slave mongers, and we can't even stand up, walk out of the house every 2 years or so and do the right thing? We met a guy the last time we voted. Well, we didn't. We just walked past him. He was talking to his friend, and he was just effusive. It's the first time I voted Republican. God, it feels so good. Yeah, it does feel good to wake up from a coma. It must. We're not trying to wake the sheeple, the lotus eaters. We're done with that shite, as Pete Hegseth said. We're trying to rouse the lions. Which would you rather have if we got to go to war? And we're in a war. Would you rather have lions or sheep? The Civil War against the Democrats, in that Civil War when it started, but it's still going. But they referenced the revolution. That was their motivation. What was their motivation? To save the Union. Washington referred to this as a union. And when Lincoln did the Gettysburg Address, he said he began with 7 years ago, and the people were, they're a hell of a lot smarter than us, despite all these Ivy Leagues and yada yada and the internet. And Louis Armstrong singing that his grandchildren will be smarter than him. No, not so. That was the greatest generation, the Revolution, not the FDR boys. No offense. But anyway, 7, and they were smart. They could say, oh, he's not talking about 1887 or whatever we got our Constitution. He's talking about 1776. They can do the math. 7 years ago, their fathers, they were referencing that. The blood and suffering of the Revolution, they would write home to their wives and say, you know what, I have to do this. They're referencing their manly fathers. And those guys, the founding fathers, were referencing their manly pilgrim. Remember, they were refugees. They risked their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. And the pilgrims, the Mayflower Compact, the fathers of the founding fathers, they referenced the Magna Carta. And they folded some of those into our Bill of Rights, our secular 10 Commandments. So when the Civil War Republican soldiers rode home, they said, the manly men who gave us our liberty, we're going to have to be manly to save that Union, that Constitution. So if you're running around saying, what is a woman? You're not on the team. One of the SCOTUS that we had that was decent at a time, they're real hit and miss. They're like a 9-cylinder car that it just misfires all the time. It always has. And one of them said, those who won our independence valued liberty as an end and a means. They believed liberty to be the secret of happiness and courage to be the secret of liberty. Those who won our independence valued liberty as an end and a means. They believed liberty to be the secret of happiness and courage to be the secret of liberty. So it's connected. There's a mutualism there. Symbiotic. So we're calling to the ones, not the ones who left their manliness somewhere and didn't bother to even try to find it. Hard times make hard men who make easy times. Easy times make soft men. Hard times create strong men who create easy times, which create weak men who create hard times. Men, this is D.H. Lawrence, men fight for liberty and win it with hard knocks. Their children, brought up easy, let it slip away again. Poor fools, and their grandchildren are once more slaves. So, I know step one, what do? Step one, know your enemy. Know your enemy, step one. Okay? That's the left. That's sinners. That's an acronym, CIN, stands for Communist, Islamists, Nazis, Democrats. But I repeat myself. The Democrat Party used to embrace communism. Let's pick a year in 1960. JFK was considered anti-communist, just like Nixon made his name in anti-communism and then went to China and smooched Fanny and created all the problems we have today. Read it and weep. But the Democrats weren't always in bed. Now they proudly embrace. Remember that? Remember our little saying, first we abhor, then we tolerate, then we embrace. And we need to add it, we need to update it for today. Then we're compelled to celebrate it. Doesn't matter what our beliefs are. We have taxation without representation, thanks to the useful idiots. So if people we love are useful idiots, we're sad. There's not much we can do, but we must fight the good fight, despite the traitors and deserters and poltroons. I came across that word poltroon. I thought I'd heard it in a movie, C.S. Lewis book. And what a great word. There's so many words that just one word, boom, like hubris, is so great. A poltroon is a contemptible, spiritless coward. It's very close to politician. H.L. Mencken used it when he referred to Congress. A contemptible, spiritless coward. So this is war. This is war. This is not... people might say, don't say that. Don't say that. It's not very, that's going to get, don't say that. Why? You have to diagnose the cancer. This is it. The Civil War has never ended. It's explained on other podcasts. It's all laid out, facts. And, the reason I'm doing this is because I don't hear anybody else doing it. I like Gutfeld and I like, Victor Davis Hanson and, it's Ben Shapiro and Thomas Sowell. He's so awesome. Larry Elder, Mark Levin, brilliant constitutional expert. But they're not telling you the whole story. They're saying that the Democrat Party is destroying America, but they're not telling you the whole truth. The truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. Here we will. So we're in a civil war. We got a lot of Jefferson Davises, not just one. All the blue states have banded together. They're in a war. You get the governor of Maine going to the White House. What's Maine is about the size of, I think there's more people on an aircraft carrier. And Trump's talking about something that all Americans want, 80%. They don't want men and women's sports. You maniacs. You're barking mad. And she just turns up, curls her lip and sneers and says, see you in court. So we don't have a constitution. We have one branch, two branches that are struggling for authority. The judicial and the legislative. And they're like, they just think they're more important than the president. Or the people. It's not we the people. It's those poltroons. So this is war. You're in it. You got to win it. It's just a warning. Now, maybe you won't. But you can't say I didn't warn you. Despite your level of interest or attention, you're either in the front lines behind enemy lines like we are in our state, and along with our fellow patriots, or you're AWOL, because you're in the if you're a citizen. Democrat Confederates were either imprisoned or they were made to sign a belligerent, an oath that they wouldn't fight again, and then they'd catch them just like the Taliban. They'd catch them later. They killed some of our people. How many people did Oblabla release from Gitmo? And turned out, he traded 5 Taliban generals. I heard Bill Maher raging about the Taliban, calling them mafia. Yeah. I think Oblabla released him for a traitor who lived in the Bay Area of California. He jumped sides. You're supposed to hang a traitor or shoot him at a firing squad. You're not supposed to trade 5 generals for him. That's your guy. That's your enemy within. So, he killed Osama. No, the Navy SEALs killed Osama. He just didn't say no. But his campaign promise was to shut down Gitmo, which is where we got the intel to find Osama. These people these maniacs with their judiciary obsession. They want to run around providing citizenship rights of citizens to enemies in a foreign country. So you're either in this fight or you're AWOL. So, I'd like to kind of end with a couple of examples of times where, I believe it or not, if you would turn this off as soon as I said, Democrats are communists or whatever, you shouldn't. Or Tampon Tim or Newscum or Nuisance, Gas and Nuisance. What an enemy that guy is. If you're going to turn it off because I said that, you probably wouldn't listen to any reason at all. Come, let us reason together. That implies that we can both reason together. So, I am capable of having kindly talks with people. I'll just give you a couple of examples. Okay? The school board, Mark Twain said that first God made idiots. That was for practice. Then he made school boards. So our school board had a very controversial thing happening. I think there were 3, get ready, cover your ears and hide your children, religious right out of the 5 people on the school board. And they wanted to kind of maybe talk sense to the kids and focus on reading, writing, arithmetic instead of sexual orientation and bananas on condoms and condoms on bananas and whatever. So they wanted to teach respect between the sexes and things. And so the school board has, it looked like the OJ trial. You go to this little school. What do they arrange? This tiny junior high multi-purpose room. They make sure that nobody can get in. Standing room only. And then they probably had the fire marshal there to say that's too many people being involved in their government, talking to their employees. And there's trucks all over with satellite dishes. It was amazing because it was a watershed issue for the whole country for some reason. Another Scopes trial. So we can't get in, so we're kind of peeking through the window. And there's this guy, it turned out to be a lawyer that I worked with. And so we were on opposite sides, polemic. We were 180 degrees on either sides of those issues. I don't know why people bother to go to a meeting of the school board to try to keep ruining and throwing gas on the fire of erosion for our society, but that was his side. So he was left and I was right. He was wrong and I was right. But we sat there and we talked. We had a real good talk. And, the whole time, I think it was 3 hours, 2 hours. And, what he said at the end of it? He said, we couldn't probably be more apart than when we started, and maybe we're closer together now. But he said, but I just can't believe, I'm really impressed that we were able to just civilly talk and reason together this whole time. And we're not enemies. We are, but, philosophically, if he keeps voting that way, but we were able to talk it out. Come, let us reason together. It was present. At one point, I went into the bathroom, and there was a guy, and he was a famous reporter from a local news station. He was in the bathroom. So I talked to him, and he made, after we were washing our hands by the sink, he made some crack about how these religious right are going to ruin our country or something. So I just talked to him. I said, I'm happen to be on their side. And here he's going to go for the knockout punch, this brilliant, what passes for logic, like on our last show. He pulls out his wallet and says, look at these 2 girls. I've got 2 girls. I want them to learn about sex. I said, then teach them. What's wrong with you teaching them what you believe about it at home and not taking my tax dollars to ruin everybody? How about that? You coward? I didn't call him that, but I said, what would you think about this? How about if you taught him? He thought he was going for the kill. Oh, that'll show him. I got 2 daughters, and I want them to learn about it. What? When did we give it over? I know education, government education, media attainment complexes. It's mostly daycare, so we can both work, mom and dad, and they can be there. But when did it become your moral authority? Was it the day that they struck down the 10 Commandments and said, you can't have it in the school? Is that when it happened? So there was a guy at work who was from the Boston area. Cool guy. We really liked each other a lot. Polar opposites. Guy loved Ted Kennedy. We'd always joke together because he liked humor. And I shared with him a book. This guy thought Colbert was a genius. Just to show you how far gone he is. But I liked the guy. His initials were BS, and that's what I called him. But I gave him P.G. O'Rourke's book, The Enemies List, and I wrote a dedication to my friend Bill. Show me a young man who's not a liberal, and I'll show you a man who doesn't have a heart. Show me an older man who's not a conservative, and I will show you a man who doesn't have a brain. And I guess the president, COO, he told me later, he came in his office, he saw it on his round guest table. This guy was a big shot. And he says he really liked your dedication, and he laughed about it. So we would sort of like barb and with each other, but we always had respectful talks. I just always fought for his right to be right. And one time I belonged to a thing called YMCA. They had a thing that was created by men that was kind of a father-son, father-daughter, one-on-one. It was actually brilliant. And it was called Indian Guides. And the whole point was to teach about Indians and their reverence for the land and how they camped. And you give each other Indian names. I was, Standing Horse, and my son was Iron Horse, and my daughter was Princess Honeybee or whatever, and I was, Big Chief. I don't know. It was cute. And everybody, and the beautiful thing was you go once a month. They did all the arrangements. So it forced you to put on your calendar a one-on-one. So if you had more than one kid, one-on-one with just them. And I just treasure those times we had. They did all the work of setting it up. You just had to show up. So we're riding to go to Catalina. So all the way from our town to Long Beach or whatever. And this guy and our 2 little girls in the back seat, just jibber-jabbering about Barbie or Powder Puff or whatever it was in those days. And he and I were on opposite poles on abortion. We talked all the way home. Or all the way there, I can't remember, but doesn't matter. And we had a great talk. We were complete, total polar opposites. And he came down, he bottom-lined it for me. And it wasn't any kind of philosophical, moral, legal. He just said, I'll tell you what, there was a while back, he and his wife were getting a divorce. It was fairly recently we thought she was pregnant, and I'll tell you what, we were not going to have that baby. We were going to go to Canada, Mexico, wherever we had to go, if there was any issue with it. So, he wasn't saying, there's a great comedian who's Persian and Italian named Nicholas DeSanto. If you ever get a chance to see him, he's just wonderful. He talks about how pro-life crisis pregnancy people they want to bring a sonogram, mobile sonogram, so that women can make an informed decision about what it is that they're throwing in the trash, slitting its throat. Sorry, facts are stubborn things. And the ACLU, of course, and the Democrats fought them. They don't want women to be informed about the decision. They just want them to have the right to have the decision, because that brilliant mind, Kamilala, said, it's all settled. It's settled. It's just settled. That's why it's so unsettling that people are trying to unsettle it. So that was his bottom line. It wasn't whether it was right or wrong, just like SCOTUS did with it. They just did whether you could do it or not. We can do a whole topic on that one. It's just the A word, but we can reason on that one. But anyway, the point is, we had a great talk, and he appreciated how respectful I was about it. So I don't know who's hearing this, so I can't tailor the conversation to something, but I can't play patty cake or potty cake in a firefight with AK-47s. These people aren't nice. These Obamas and Newsoms and Tampon Tim. Do you know Tampon Tim? Do you know what he wanted to take your children? If your children were in Wisconsin and they got the idea through this thing that psychologists, I guess today, are still calling gender dysphoria, and they got the idea they wanted to have a double mastectomy perfectly healthy or become a eunuch, they could cross over into Minnesota, and he would take them in like a sanctuary, like those poor kids. They got to get away from their parents, or they're not going to get their freedom, what they feel like they want today. And that's what you call, they used to say Minnesota nice. He said, it's just socialism is just being neighborly. You call it socialism, I call it being neighborly. He hasn't thought something through any more than Biden ever did. He just says things to get him elected. If you want to knock Trump, he says too much. And Greg Gutfeld has a series called We Don't Deserve Him. So, by the way, the YMCA Indian Guides, they had to change their name. I walked by the HOA pool and the next generation of the tribe. I saw the chief out there with his kids. And I said, so I heard they're changing the name. Can't have it. Even though the Indians want to be called Indian, even though the Redskins fought for that team name, the politically correct, virtue signaling NFL, they're going to change it. Sorry, we're not really interested in what you want. I always ask people, what do you want to be called? Black or African American? What do you prefer? Isn't that courteous? Isn't that nice? To an Indian, I said, what do you want? Do you want Native American or do you want Indian? What do you want? I think that's right, isn't it? That's what we're supposed to do by fiat, compelled speech, is find out their 57 Heinz pronouns and remember, commit it to memory. That's like these people who tell you, hey, I don't do text, I only do email. Oh, okay, I'll just keep that in mind. Okay, I'll have 9 lists in my head for what your preferences are this month. Anyway, so this chief says, yeah, they're changing the name. They're talking about maybe adventure guides. Oh, barf. I said, why don't you suggest gaming guides? All these Indian casinos, they seem to call it gaming. It's all part of the euphemisms of the age. It's not gambling, it's gaming. It's not adultery, it's an affair. I had an affair. They just had we'll talk about it some other time, but we have to couch the worst things in the history of mankind We have to couch them in these Victorian terms. Oh, they're sleeping together. Or I remember when Rod Stewart was dating somebody. Yeah, they're dating. I hope he picked her up in his dad's car with a corsage and some candy. I mean, they're shacking up. They're fornicating. They're committing adultery. So you expect me to be in this discourse regime where I can't say this and I got to say that? No, thank you. I'd rather tell the truth. So we had a conversation around the campfire because one of the guys says there is not one bit of difference between the people on the other side of the Rio Grande River there in Mexico and us. And I said, well, no, there's a very, very big difference. There's a big difference. And I just kind of introduced the idea that, think about it. You have the Puritan ethos north of the Rio Grande, up into Canada and here. Canada used to have it. I don't know what they have now. And then you have the Catholic ethos from Rio Grande down. So what are those two? Think about it. One of them is the northern one, the Puritan ethos. It's the priesthood of the believer. You're responsible for your own house. Profit isn't bad. It's good. You know, you earn so you can help other people and help your family, and you save so you can help other people. And what is it on the other side? The Pope tells you what to do. The Pope tells the priest, who tells you if you get any silver or gold, it's got to go to the candlesticks. Yeah, I'm kind of oversimplifying, but it's kind of a mindset, isn't it? Isn't it kind of a sheeple setup? You know, when Martin Luther broke away, the Bible was chained to the pulpit so that the common people couldn't get at it. Completely the opposite of the Mayflower Compact, where they left England because they couldn't worship as they felt. Their Protestant ethos told them to. So now we've dabbled with the Confucian ethos, but it doesn't matter. There is a psychological, and it turns out, you know, that tribe was all lawyers and doctors. And one of the guys was this kind of big shot lawyer, very Catholic, very devout Catholic. And he talked to me after everybody went back to their little cabins. He said, wow, I never even thought about that. I never, ever thought. Of course you didn't. So anyway, next time, you can talk kindly. You can speak the truth in love. You know? There's a little tautology. It's real simple. God is love. And God said, I am the truth. And those who are of the truth hear my voice. So what's my target audience? People who love the truth. If you don't, or you're just not even interested in this at all, that doesn't mean it's not going to ruin things for everybody else. Anyway, thank you. Thank you very much, all of you, for listening. And until next time, thank you. Go in peace and truth. No truth, no peace, no nothing. Till next time, thank you.